Welcome to the Craft of Coaching podcast, where we dive into what it truly takes to become a skilled, confident life coach. I'm your host, Kate, head of the CLCC or Credentialed Life Coach Collective, an ICF accredited Level 1 coach training program. We combine courage, coaching, and community to offer you more than just a training program, but a life-changing experience where you use your own personal transformation as the learning ground for supporting your clients. On this podcast, we explore how you can use coaching skills to support your clients or expand your own growth, all grounded in evidence-based coaching practices. Learn more about our program and get free resources for becoming a life coach at teamclcc.com. And now, here's today's episode. Oh, it's so exciting to welcome back today's guest, Andrea Owen, who is an author, a speaker, a life coach. She's written several books, including her most recent, which is really exciting, Live Like You Give a Damn. Today, we're going to be talking about what it's like when you realize that you, the coach, are the one who needs to step away. And hopefully, any coaches who are listening to this will be able to recognize their own moments when perhaps it's time for you, the coach, to be the one in the client's seat and receive the support that you need. We're going to get into that and so much more. So here's today's conversation with Andrea Owen. Andrea, welcome to the Craft of Coaching podcast, a repeat guest because every time you're here, you drop those truth bombs and you've got so much to share. Thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm honored, and it's been a few years, so I've got some new truth bombs, I'm sure, that are brewing that'll come up.
I know. We've survived a pandemic.
We did.
We've survived quite a few things, which
yes.
I think we'll touch on today.
Probably.
So one of the first things I want to bring up is the fact that you have birthed a new book baby.
I did.
And you, your latest book, it's called Live Like You Give a Damn, and it's about 25 bold moves to get honest and face the hard stuff. And so I wanted to start out with the fact that we've been coaching long enough to remember the days when coaching was all about just focus on the positive, not the hard stuff. It was focus on the positive. And I would love to hear your take on how the craft of coaching has shifted towards doing deeper work for you as a coach.
Yeah, I think too, it might be even just kind of fun to mention that, for me, I started training in 2007 and had a couple babies and got married. So I took a long time to finish my all of my training, but my official certification came in 2010, and that's when I launched my business, yourkickasslife.com back then. And I think that, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. I look back on that time, and I was interested originally in becoming a therapist and found life coaching and was like, oh, this is better for me because I am just such a naturally positive, cheerful person. I was comparing being a therapist to being a coach, and I, as a professional, I was like, I'd much rather avoid like big feelings and things like that and do coaching. Like, yeah, if we're going to talk about some life, eventually in terms of being better, you're going to have to talk about feelings, but I'm going to let therapists do that. Coaching is for me because I get to avoid the hard stuff and the big stuff. So that's where I sort of started my whole journey of being a coach. Because back then, my gosh, that was 16 years ago. Mm-hmm. And internet years is a lifetime. That's kind of how it was, to me, at least. That's sort of how it was carved out. Do you agree with that? Do you see how that was?
Oh, completely. And that's something we talk about in CLCC that I've even seen change since our program launched in 2014. When our program launched in 2014, it was like this almost like, whoa, you're almost breaking a rule, Kate, if you say a couple things. One, that coaching and therapy have a lot of similarities and overlap. Like at the time, it was just like, no. They're totally different modalities. Oh, yeah.
That's what we were told in training, totally different things. And then I'm like, are they though?
Yeah, it's like they both bring in active listening. They both bring in asking powerful questions. They both bring in staying client-led. Like there's a lot of overlap. And another thing that was just really like, whoa, at the time. Do you remember when people would say, therapy's about the past, coaching's about the future.
Yes.
And therapy's about feelings, coaching is about goals.
Yes. I still say that sometimes if someone doesn't know what coaching is at all, and I'm just going to give like a rudimentary description, that's what I still say. But
Mhm.
if they want to know more, I will go into more detail. But to me, that's still kind of how it's looked at from a very foundational piece.
Yeah. But then it's like you start working with clients, and the reality is, and this is, like this is me soapboxing just a little bit here. Um, Nobody ever goes 24 hours without an emotion.
Mhm.
Like every coach is going to end up working with clients on emotions. I think, though, if we go back to what you originally thought when you became a coach, which was also the same kind of thing that I thought when I was becoming a coach, I would imagine that the emotions that we didn't want to work with people on were those that we knew were long haul journeys that required a more specialized skill set. So it is very different to support a client who is dealing with like a sense of grief after a layoff than
Mhm.
it is to support a client who is in a really serious depression after a layoff. They can't get out of bed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
These are two different responses to a layoff, both absolutely valid responses to a layoff or a breakup or life's difficulties. But one modality is more equipped and the other is not.
Exactly. Well, I thought where I thought you were going with that was, the things that our client brings us usually tend to be the deep rooted um, pain that we have as coaches, which I think that comes up for every coach, whether you started coaching a year ago or you started coaching in 2010, is that your clients will bring things to you that are very relatable in your own life, that are your own wounds. And one of the hardest things for me, as I learned in my training, was the self-management piece of coaching,
Mm.
like learning how to, compartmentalize so that I can serve my clients best. And in order to do that really well, I had to heal my own stuff. And that was the part I didn't know. When I signed up for coach training, I had no idea what I was in for in terms of my own work.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and there was another question I wanted to ask today that kind of relates to that, which is how common it is for coaches to actually empathize with what their clients are bringing. There's a role power differential that's assumed.
Mhm.
And by assumed, I mean that even if coaches are saying to their clients, like, hey, like we're shoulder to shoulder, I'm not quote unquote the one in charge here, you are. There tends to be an automatic ascribing of power to the coach. And that's something that I think coaches do well to really be aware of.
Mhm.
But what might surprise some people who are less familiar with coaching is how often clients bring issues that we ourselves are struggling with, to your point,
Yep.
or how much we can empathize with what it's like when a client is struggling, and it's challenging to say to that client, like, hey, human to human here,
Mhm.
I gotta call out a problematic pattern like lack of accountability. So,
Mhm.
what do you do in those moments when you notice that you over identify with what a client is going through, or when you know that you need to say something to a client that might be kind of hard for them to hear, but that's in their best interests?
Yeah. So what I do is name the coaching kind of skill that I'm about to tell them. So I'm a huge believer in the gift of transparency, and as a coach, that you need to learn how to drive that. Transparency can be like a sports car that if you hit the gas too hard, it can, it can go sideways. And so learning how to the beauty of really like kind of professional transparency is a skill in coaching. And so that being said, what I would do is, so like if you were my client, I would say, here's what I would say. I would say, in my coaching school, they have a phrase when we were being trained, and that phrase is to say what's there. And what that means is like saying the things that are not really seen or not obvious, or that we feel as coaches. And right now what's coming up for me is, and then I, fill in the blank. And I think that can be a good on-ramp, if you will, in order to kind of just make the client feel safe in a way, and that they know that, like, I'm not doing this because I'm trying to be mean or because or be, like to be a drill sergeant of any kind. It's truly because this is part of coaching, and it's a way to do it from a more loving place and more gently.
Yeah. And I think of those as transitional statements, when like we're setting up the question in such a way that, with communication, we want to throw the ball so that the person can actually catch it. And it sets up the ball in a way that the client can catch the message that's being tossed their way.
Yeah, I do. Another thing that I do as well, I'm teaching an online journaling program right now, and we just had our first call last night. And I've taught it several times before. And when I facilitate these groups, many times people bring big stuff, and some of these people have been following me for years and listening to my podcast. And so they get on a call with me in a group setting, and they're all of a sudden just like, a little bit of trauma dumping can sometimes happen. And so even last night, I had a moment where there was somebody who was really feeling the need to share, and it was kind of taking up a lot of space on the call. And I had to gently, this is another coaching skill we learn, like how do we interrupt people and gently and bring them back, especially when they're sharing something so vulnerable. And so what I do in those moments, and what I did last night, and please know, I've been doing this for a long time, and it's still sometimes I step in SHIT and do it messy. But what I said was, I said the person's name and said something like, and I kind of repeated back to her a little bit of the story she was telling, just to let her know that I am very much listening. And then I said, I hear that you're, fill in the blank. And then I said, and me too. I have been in that place where I have felt that way with my family. And I cannot wait to hear the rest of the story and to be able to serve you. And for sake of time, can you let us know what your question is? And so it's, and that I could not have done in my first few years of coaching. I didn't grow up in a family where empathy and compassion and space were held. So like that is something I had to learn by trial and error, from my training, and practice it over and over again. And then also watch other coaches do it really beautifully. And that's how that is.
What about the self-management piece? You said that there were times when self-management as a coach was hard with clients. What are some tools you learned around that, or that you practice today?
There's been a couple of times, and to kind of like define what that is for people who aren't sure. So self-management is when we are able to manage our own thoughts and emotions and energy in a moment that is difficult, whether it's, that we can, our client is explaining the exact same scenario that we're struggling with, or if we get triggered by something that they say, I've had clients before who kind of suddenly, confessed that they've been having an affair, and it's like when you're kind of jarred by something. And so for me, there have been times where I get so triggered, not very many, but like where I get so triggered where I have to be very transparent and say, gosh, I am realizing that you're, and I want to say, like, this happens very rarely. Like, this is like when it's the worst. I've said, I am, what's coming up for me right now is that I can very much relate to what you're going through in my own life. And I am, for the sake of transparency, just struggling to get my thoughts together. So if you just give me like 1 second to take a couple of deep breaths, because I want to be able to support you as best that I can. And I'll say that while I'm smiling. Like, that's the beauty of being able to be on video now. Whereas when I started coaching, it was all via phone. And I think that when we can do that well, that vulnerability between two humans, and research shows us that trust is built in small increments over time. It can help us self-manage in the moment and also build trust within the coach and client relationship.
Absolutely. And I love that you modeled that. And in particular, I hope that if people are listening to the episode, they notice how the way that you phrased that is collaborative. It's about not I am the guru coach who has all the answers for you. And the second you finish sharing something profound, I'm just like jumping right in, like, okay, here's what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's rather, yeah, as part of supporting you, I'm not just jumping right in. I don't have your answers. I'm going to take a beat and think about the best way to support you in this moment. I'm with
Right.
you in this moment. I'm supporting you moment to moment to moment.
Yes. And I'm also very careful on how much I can relate, because then if we go too far, then we can start to make it about us.
Mm-hmm.
And then it pulls away from our client. So it's a skill and an art, really. That took me years to master.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of being careful about how much we reveal about ourselves in a session, I know that you and I, in terms of like our wider marketing, just kind of like with our communities, have both been transparent about going through a rough couple of years. And I know that many coaches are uncertain about how to navigate those public facing aspects of being a coach, supporting others while running a business. There can often be a fear of um, people aren't going to think that I'm qualified to do this job if they know that I've struggled. I would definitely say that something when, I stepped away from my business for a few years, I was, going through a pretty bad depressive episode. I came back. I remember having that thought. I remember feeling self-conscious about the fact that had been away and was coming back, and like, what kind of explanation did I owe?
Mhm.
What was honest for me as well as appropriate for others? So I'm wondering if you would share more about your experience navigating that space.
Yeah, it's interesting because this circles back to what we were talking about previously, the difference between therapy and coaching. And a typical therapy model, and you would know this, but I believe that it's like part of the ethics portion of becoming a therapist is that you do not share with your clients really anything about your personal life. I remember when I was like 18 or 19, I had my first therapist, and I've been seeing her for a while. And in one session, I was almost begging her to tell me something about her life that was hard, because I was making up a story that, oh, since she's so wise, and she was like, my mom's age, I just was like, oh, is her life perfect? And
Mhm.
so coaching, as it was sort of becoming more and more popular, when we entered, it was already sort of established that coaches can be more open about their personal life, with their clients, and just sort of like public facing. So there's that point. And then also it is so tricky and so unique for every person. If I was going to give someone, and this could be a whole a whole podcast episode in itself, and because I know that this is the thing, the kind of sticking point that so many coaches in training really struggle with, or even people who are thinking about becoming coaches, like, oh, I have to be healed, because they kind of know, like, oh, well, I'm at least going to be out a little bit about my stuff. My short answer is you don't need to be totally healed. But I think that one of the things that is helpful to learn, even before or during, as you're becoming a coach and becoming out with your stuff, is emotional boundaries, is knowing what's yours and what's someone else's. And if you can work on emotional boundaries in that way, I think it becomes then a lot easier to decide how much to share. For example, like I share a lot on my podcast and on social media. And there are moments where I share even more with a particular one-on-one client. And I've learned to do that in a way that doesn't make it about me, but more so makes us able to see each other's humanity in a moment where they really need it. So that's where I use that. And I'm kind of all over the place. I love this topic. So I'm trying to
No,
like,
because what I hear you saying is that it's selective, and that what I heard you name as like the big takeaway is that it has to be for the purpose of the client. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I do not think coaches should work with people who, I do not think that just because a coach has, for instance, dealt with alcoholism, that they should then be like, I'm the coach for alcoholics. I think that
Right.
alcoholics
Thanks for
need
saying
like
that.
a
Mhm.
more, they need therapy, they need a much wider net of support than coaching. And
Yeah.
yet at the same time, I'm just going to use this example. If I were an alcoholic in rehab, I think it would give me comfort to know that the sober alcoholics supporting me through rehab were people who understood what it was like
Right.
for me to have that experience of addiction.
100%. Yeah. And I love the way that you clarified that. And yes, it is in service of my client. For example, when I first got sober in 2011, I felt this need, and I was born this way, like this need to talk about it and to like kind of just be public with this like really incredible challenge and wound that I had. And one of my dear friends, Courtney Webster, who's also a coach and has been for many, many years and also had many years of sobriety, said, give it a year. She's like, babe, this is so raw, and
Mhm.
allow this to be yours. Allow this to be your healing journey, and that you don't have to serve other people yet. You will, like, know that you will when the time is right. And she said, please just give it a year, like one calendar year. And I did, and I took that advice, and it was the best advice that I've honestly ever received in terms of that topic with my sobriety. And like I needed that year to really like dig my heels into my own healing work. And it served me so well so that I could have those emotional boundaries. It's like, in other words, I'll bottom line it this way. Don't don't be transparent and open about your stuff from the place of, oh, this is going to be therapeutic for me. This is going to be my healing modality. No, do that privately. I'm not privately, but like with your colleagues and your own support system. And then from there, I don't even think you need to be all the way through the journey of the healing, but at least have something, some kind of foundation under your belt, so that you can both serve yourself and your clients when you are transparent about it and telling your stories, etc.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like, for instance, I was, and it's interesting because I did not initially come right out when I was back with saying, here's why,
Mm-hmm.
not in any big way. And then I ended up noticing how many of my colleagues had taken a step back from their businesses. Like,
Yeah,
a lot of
I
people.
did. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, a lot of people. And then that kind of got me thinking, well, if people who have built out these businesses, which, it's obviously challenging to build out a business and to become successful at it, it takes work, it takes time. And if people who have done that are saying things have gotten tough enough for me that I need to take a step back, I
Mm-hmm.
guarantee you that clients who are, trying to get through their day to day, they're going through the same thing. And then what came to me was this sentence one day when I was thinking about it, which is that your comeback matters more than your setback.
Yeah. You
Like,
told me that as a friend.
oh, I have? Oh, okay. Hi.
Yes, I wrote it down.
Hi, I'm Kate, and I just dispense little one-liners to everybody. Um, but I really believe it. I really, really do, that the setbacks don't define us. The comebacks are actually what define us. And that was like I guess a self-coaching moment of like reframing this thing that felt like why, some level of judgment and on myself, like, why didn't I keep it together enough to like keep on keeping on,
Mhm.
which is nuts
Yeah,
because I would never judge a client that way. I would
right.
never judge a friend that way. It was just standard. I'm, holding for myself, or was holding for myself, in another place for me to notice where, like, okay, perfectionism wants to like look like I got it all together, but I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody needs to rest sometimes, and for you and I, it looked like pulling way back on our coaching businesses so that we could do that, so we could sustain ourselves and our families. And then when we're ready, because like this is not an easy job. It really isn't. Like it is, but it isn't. Because I think it forces you to, at least this is my experience, I have found that coaching forces us to not only see our clients, but ourselves multidimensionally. And, saying that makes me think like, well, this is why we tend to trust coaches or therapists who show us multiple dimensions than just one. And as we work through working with clients and other dimensions and on our own, it can be very exhausting
Mhm.
energetically.
Yeah.
And I think that at least for me, that among other things sort of took a toll over the years. And like I reached, during the pandemic, I reached a breaking point where I had gotten sick and needed to leave my marriage and had all these, ruptures were happening. And I was like, I need to rest. I can't show up for my clients the way that I want to. And for me, that was a few years. And I'm just now sort of like coming back up for air.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a tricky thing to navigate, but I actually hear in what you shared that you did what was in the best interest of your clients. I would absolutely say that I was in the same position as well of this. I don't feel in integrity trying to coach clients when I know that like I'm not functioning.
Yeah.
And and there's a big difference between having a bad week, which like I'm very aware of the fact that this podcast will go to some newbie coaches or maybe people considering coaching who aren't in yet, who hear that and they're very intimidated. Like, wait a second, this job is just going to totally like crush me to ground. I don't think it's that. I think that there was a very unique set of circumstances that were going on in the world and
Yes.
for me. And actually, as a testament to what you've built, Andrea, I would say what I've built as well, we're able to come back, right? Like there's a lot of corporate jobs out there where if you step out of the industry or the job market for a couple of years, people are like, well, I mean, I don't, what?
Yeah, I don't trust your comeback. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They're going to judge you for it. And I love that this is a job where we can go, hey, yeah, human.
Yeah, I was just out there being human.
Just out there, life was lifing, and I was humaning.
Right. And it was a little bit tough little while there, but yeah, I'm back.
I'm back, and I got some new life lessons for you.
Yes. Oh my gosh, so many.
So finishing up today, I'm really curious about this because I love having this conversation about what's changed in the industry and like what we've noticed because we're coaching dinosaurs and we've been around for a minute. What's something that you really felt was true when you first started out as a coach that you have come to view differently?
Well, one thing, and this is sort of a funny story, is that when I was sitting in my chair in a conference room in Los Angeles, California in 2008, my alma mater is the Coaches Training Institute, which I don't even know if that exists anymore. I think it's called something else, new owners, whatever. And back then it was the Coaches Training Institute. And at the end of there were 5 weekends and at the end of each weekend, they would spend time doing like Q&A with the coaches up in the front of the room. And these were, master certified coaches and had been in it for a long time. And, they would talk about, how the business of coaching, and, people would ask like, how much do you charge? And they would tell us, and then I would get out my calculator and I was like, oh, I'm going to walk away from this room and go hang up a shingle and a website, and I'm going to make 6 figures, easy peasy. I couldn't wait, Kate.
Wait a second. You're telling me there's a job I can do from home in my pajamas, doing work that I actually like, and I'm going to make all this money?
Yeah, but I thought it was easy as just hanging up a shingle and like build it and they will come. I didn't realize that I actually was an entrepreneur. Like I call myself like the accidental entrepreneur. Like I was never that entrepreneurial kid. Like that was my best friend Karina that sold all of the Girl Scout cookies. I did not. And so that was something that I felt like was true, that it was just going to be really easy to get clients. And I didn't realize that there was work involved. And so, which then required me to do my own personal work again. But another thing that I thought to be true, that's not, it goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning of just this kind of, good vibes only, this positivity mindset, that everything is solvable by just changing your thoughts. I hung on to that, I think, for a couple of years because I wanted to for my own life. I didn't want to, I was born with this deep innate desire to get to the root of the problems. I want to talk about this thick air that is in the living room of my my family of origin home. And, of course, nobody else wanted to talk about it. And so, growing up in this work is like, I still felt that deep need to want to go deep with people. But I realized very quickly that I prefer to stay on the surface mostly. So it was a real, what do you call it when you kind of have, it was like a bit of an existential crisis, really, when I realized slowly over time through coaching. I think it was probably around the time that I got sober in 2011, where I was like, oh, damn. Okay. I can't coach my clients, nor can I live my life and grow and evolve if I just stay on the surface. And now I call it like the 7-layer dip, like where I had to go through my own sort of reckoning with my feelings, with my emotions, with my family of origin, with my role as the youngest daughter, like all of these really difficult, sometimes traumatic things in order to find myself, in order to come home to myself so that I can dive deep with my clients when they need me to, and in those moments so that I can self-manage.
Yeah. But wouldn't take nothing for your journey now, right?
It's it's like I think about Andrea circa 2010. I was 35, and oh my gosh, I actually wrote a poem about like all the different versions of myself and how I just want to go back and like hold her face in my hands and like tell her that I love her. And like I I truly believe for me that I have been called to do this work, not just coaching, but like the deep transformative work so that I can heal my lineage, so that I can help heal my family. In fact, as we're recording this, I just had a huge conversation with my mother and my sister. And that's proving to be transformative for all of us. And so I think that if you feel that, hi, welcome, me too. And it's valid. And my advice is to slowly pull the thread. You don't need to pull it all at once. You don't. It is, as long as you just as you acknowledge its presence. And by its presence, I mean like the healing and just the looking at all the stuff that needs to be done. Trust me when I tell you, it will happen over time. It will happen over time as long as you keep your heart open and your mind open and just keep tugging on that thread.
Yeah. We don't have to blow up our whole lives.
I've done that twice, and I do not recommend. In fact, I'm talking to this healer who's a shaman, and like I told him like kind of where I'm at, and he was like, "You need healing about that pattern that you have about blowing up your life." I'm like, "God damn it!"
I did a speaking gig yesterday, actually, where one of the things I was saying to the audience is that being fed up is something of a miracle, because when you're fed up, you're finally willing to do what it takes to change, but that we have to be really conscious of not engineering our lives for crisis, because otherwise what happens is people start only making changes when they're totally fed up. Right. And then it's like, that's a much more stressful way to do it. It's not that it isn't valid. And sometimes life just gives you a kick in the teeth, to make you change. And that's just how it goes. But I'm talking about the times when we are engineering our lives in that direction and going, maybe I need to look at that pattern.
Yeah. And please, like, PS, can we talk about this more offline as friends?
Yes, absolutely. Well, Andrea, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you coming back. A reminder, Andrea's newest book is Live Like You Give a Damn, which I think is going to be a new favorite, because that's about like doing that deeper work that we're talking about today.
Yeah, it is. Thank you so much for having me. And I just want to send a quick note of gratitude for those who are listening. I know how valuable your time is, and I appreciate that you chose to spend it with us.
All right, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Before you go, would you help us out and take a moment to give us a rating in iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you're listening? It really helps us get the word out to other listeners. And before you go today, would you like free resources to support your coaching journey? Whether you're considering becoming a coach or you want advanced coach skills training, access our coaching resource library at teamclcc.com. Again, that's teamclcc.com. Can't wait to connect with you. And again, thanks for listening.